Your LinkedIn feed can give you daily insights from your professional community. It cannot keep you updated on the daily office gossip.
Oh my gosh, no way.
It can help you stay informed on the latest news and trends in your industry. It cannot stop your boss from trying to start a new office trend. Who's ready for Flip-Flop Fridays? And while we can't stop all of the office jargon,
Does this vibe with our collaborative lattice work metric?
LinkedIn can start taking your career to new heights. LinkedIn is the network that works for you.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Kraft Mac and Cheese is better than 90s hip-hop. We'll remind you of your childhood without making you feel incredibly old. Kraft Mac and Cheese. Best thing ever.
When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the GMC Certified Service Fresh Start Tire event. Visit gmc.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only. Highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends May 31st, 2026. Not available with other offers.
Hey, business owners, the NFL season is a big revenue driver. Now there's a smarter way to get ready. EverPass is the only authorized commercial platform for NFL Sunday Ticket, delivering every live out-of-market regular season Sunday afternoon game. Lock in the best offer now with up to 40% off, saving up to $2,500. For the first time, you can pay over 9 months. Get up to 6 free devices and a free bar kit. Sign up by April 27th. Visit everpass.com. Limited time offer. Terms apply.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 821 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. I'm going to be frank with you. We have a lot of stuff to cover today. So much so that this is the first of a 2-part episode, 821 and 822, where we're going to be discussing all the news that has happened in the last, Jason, day and a half, maybe?
Yeah, dude,
it's been a very busy day and a half. I'm Donald One. I'm your host for this episode. You just heard Jason. I am on the road. I am in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm here for the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks. I've done it. I've done the Oaks once before, Jason, but I get to experience Derby madness for the first time on Saturday. So I'm looking forward to that.
Getting back to what you were saying, like a couple days ago, we had the rookie of the year between Cooper and Kahn, and we were like, let's
just wait for one more thing. Yeah.
We'll wait. If to get one other thing, maybe we'll do a little podcast, record something. A little bit of recruiting news is out there. We're like, maybe. And then suddenly, like in the past 24 to 36 hours, like boom, 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 big stuff, just one after another. So we had to hop on, and it's 2 episodes worth. It's probably 3 episodes worth.
So yeah, instead of us chatting your ears off for 2 straight hours, we're going to give you 2 one-hour episodes. Maybe they won't be that long, but Jason, I liked what you said there. The boom boom. That's a double
boom,
entendre, if you will, because our first story that we're going to talk about on this episode is Joaquim Boumtje Boumtje, who is a American-born but plays in Spain for FC Barcelona. I'm going to have to talk to Jon Scheyer about this Barcelona pipeline that we've got going on here. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But Joaquim Boumtje Boumtje has committed to Duke. This was very fast. This was a very fast courtship, it felt like. Jason, this was something that over the weekend we're like, we might talk about the fact that we're kicking the tires on this guy from Spain. And then I guess after a Zoom call, it was a wrap. And all of a sudden he committed this afternoon to the Blue Devils. A 7-foot guy, 230 pounds. He has a 9-foot 4-inch reach. He's one of those kids that, Jason, I think a lot of people have been talking about, A, getting players out of the portal, B, getting players that are going to stick around a while. Well, we've gone to Spain. We've gotten a guy, Jason, as you were about to talk about, that will be here, or at least be in college for at least 2 years, because he's 16 years old. He cannot enter the draft after next year, so he has to be in college for at least 2 years. But man, we're getting a guy that a lot of people are talking about as arguably the best in his class. He's reclassifying in a way up a year and could be a guy that is at or near the top of the NBA draft in a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. As you note, he's only 16. He turned 17 late in May.
May 30th, yep.
Yeah. And the NBA requires that you be 19 in the year that you are drafted. So recall Cooper Flagg had a December birthday, which meant he just got under the line to be drafted last year. Had he been born in January, Cooper Flagg would not have been eligible to be drafted in the year that he was drafted. Boumtje Boumtje, or we'll just call him, I've heard some people call him JBB. Some people call him Boom Boom. I like Boom Boom.
Well, Jason, the funny thing is everyone's like, I'm not going to be able to pronounce Boumtje Boumtje. If you don't remember his dad
Ruben
Boumtje,
yeah.
Dad was a player, and also had one of the cool names in college basketball back in the late 90s. So yeah, Boumtje Boumtje is one I'm going to easily remember. The question now is if Joaquin hyphenates it like his dad, because I've seen both out there on the internet. We'll have to get clarification on how you spell it in print. But for us, we can just say boom, boom. We got another one.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, his dad, you mentioned, played for Georgetown, was in the NBA for a couple years, then played played overseas. Actually didn't play in Spain, which is very interesting, I think. But because the Spanish league has a really, really good developmental program, I think that's why they decided that they were going to have him, learn his game over in Spain. I saw an interview with him. He came to Spain. I want to say he said he was like in eighth grade or ninth grade. So he's been there for a few years now, working on his game with Barcelona. He plays for Barca's team in the under-22 league. There's a special league they have there that functionally is their way of competing with college basketball to some extent. In the U.S., players develop in college. Over in Spain, they don't do it the same kind of way. So they have these younger leagues. Again, it's a U22 league. It's called the Liga U, and that's it's worth noting he never got a call up. Boom Boom never got called up to Barca's full team, their regular team, which is something that Dame Sarr did have. Dame Sarr, in fact, for a couple years, played at least partially on the full team over there,
on the senior team,
the senior team, exactly, the team that was competing for EuroLeague titles and things like that. So Boom Boom never quite got that, but there's little question that he would have gotten it had he stuck around a little bit longer. And I think part of the reason he never got that call up was because he was so young. As I mentioned, he played for their Liga U team, the under-22 team. I'm going to give you some stats now, Donald. He averaged 23 minutes per game, 16.2 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game, almost 2 assists per game, better than a steal per game, only 0.7, less than 1 block per game. And we're talking about a guy 6'11", 7 feet. He is not yet an elite rim protector. He is not a super explosive athlete, but he is really, really skilled. He does, by the way, he does a really nice job of not fouling, which is often a problem for young big men. I noticed he committed only 1.8 fouls per game last season. He had a really low foul rate. Now, there are also some concerns about his defense. He's not a great defender yet. His offense is way ahead of his defense at the moment. So that may be part of the reason why he's not fouling as much, but really, really skilled, especially on the perimeter. This is a guy who, even though he's got center size, and by that I'm talking 6'11", 7 feet, and he's still growing, 230 pounds, and he's still growing. Even though he's got those kind of attributes, he's a guy who mostly faces the basket. He hit about 33%, close to a third of his three-pointers on pretty decent volume. He was taking about more than 4 three-pointers per game, but he's not just an outside shooter. He has not. I've spent a lot of time watching some tape on this guy, reading scouting reports, things like that. Got really nice footwork, good finishing ability in the post. He has nice moves when he gets down in there. He hit about 60% of his 2-point field goal attempts, which tells you something. And he took twice as many 2s as 3s. So he's not just standing outside and shooting 3-pointers the whole time. And he's a pretty good free throw shooter, which shows you he's a good shooter in general. He hits close to 80% from the free throw line. Donald, one of the things I noticed, usually when you have a big man, usually when you got someone who's close to 7 feet, who's taking 3-pointers, like think about, the way like Malik Brown and Pat Gungba took 3-pointers for Duke last year. They tend to be a little bit flat-footed when they're taking a 3. Like there's not as much, it doesn't look like a jump shooter takes a 3-pointer when a big man takes that shot. Think about the way Kamen Malawach or Derek Lively looked when they took 3-pointers. Boom Boom does not look that way. He takes a true jump shot. It is very fluid. He's got a high release. He gets it off very nice and quickly. He also has really nice handle and is not afraid to take guys off the dribble. He's got a very quick first step, and he gets downhill to the basket with big strides because he's so big. I mean, you can see with his size what a problem this presents for defenses. Like if you step up on him with someone who's big enough to guard him, he's going to go around them. He's got the dribbling skills. He's got that first step. He's going to go around most other 7-footers who are not as fleet of foot as he is. But if you step back a little bit off of him, he's going to shoot threes in your face all day long. Just really, really like for a 7-foot, 230-pound guy who could play center, he's playing a stretch 4. He's facing the basket and attacking from the perimeter. Now, he was named the MVP. There's a major Liga U tournament that they have over there, and he was named the MVP of that entire tournament. And it's worth noting, I talked about his stats and things like that. He wasn't doing this for a bad team. He was doing this for a team that was the Barca, the Liga U team for Barca went 25-5 on the season. They were really, really good. And so he was putting up these numbers for a team that was winning and winning a lot. And that just says something to me. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Jason, I think the one thing about him and looking at tape as well, and just knowing a lot about ACB and Liga U and how that works, he over there is considered a stretch 5. Like he wasn't guarding power forwards and small forwards at 7 feet. At 7 feet, he kind of had that stigma, like you know how Kevin Garnett used to say he always wanted to be listed at 6'11" because at 7 feet, someone would make the mistake of putting him at the 5, and he never went to bang with guys like Shaq. This is Boumtje Boumtje. He's listed at 7 feet, but he plays kind of a stretch 5 position. And you talked about his shot. I'm not comparing his game to this, but his shot is reminiscent of, you think about a stretch 5, you think of guys like Dirk Nowitzki, right? Who, yeah, sure, they're going to be guarding guys in the post. They're going to be guarding 5s, but they play more like a power forward. And so his shot is more of a guy who has learned how to shoot from guys smaller than him. Now, the one knock on that is, and it's a knock necessarily, not necessarily in a hugely bad way, but a lot of Europeans, when they come over here, are impressed or sometimes swallowed up by the physicality of the game here. They don't allow you to be as physical in Europe as they do now, which is why you mentioned the 1.8 fouls per game. I'm like, yeah, because they're not banging in the post like they will here. That is something that he's going to learn, and thankfully, he's going to have a couple years to learn that before he goes to the league where physicality is everything.
Yeah, you make the Dirk comparison is very interesting. I hadn't thought of that one because I was thinking of current players when I was looking at him. Mm-hmm. And the current player that I thought of a pretty fair bit when watching him, and I've heard other people use this, is Karl Anthony Towns.
That's a good comparison. Like as far as the way he shoots.
Yeah, exactly. Now, look, like all youngsters, he can be wildly inconsistent. I was looking at his game logs, game to game. He had one game this year where he was 8 of 11 on 3-pointers. I was like, wow. He had another game where he went 0 for 5 on 3-pointers. Mm-hmm. Now, look, he's really young. He's still learning a lot. And Duke, I am convinced, is going to bring him along slowly. I mentioned Cooper Flagg earlier. He's coming to Duke, arriving at Duke. He's 5 months younger than Cooper Flagg was. But do not expect that he is going to have that kind of immediate impact. You need to temper your expectations of what this guy's going to be in year one. I think, like you said, the physicality is going to be a major step up. He's going to be younger than every other guy on the floor when he's out there. And I suspect that Duke sees him primarily as, at least initially, as a backup at the 4, maybe, and maybe at the 5. Duke has a lot of positional versatility. I think Patrick Gungba is a 5, but when you get to Cam Williams when you get to Drew Sharnowski, Drewski, those are guys who, even Sebastian Wilkins, there's enough positional versatility that you can see guys playing a few different places. And I think Boom Boom is going to be the same kind of way. You can see him playing 5, you can see him playing 4. And I think Duke's just going to look for which one makes the most sense. The real excitement about this guy, I think, while he will contribute to next year's team, while he will be a valuable depth piece on next year's team, and while I think that his game will grow and grow over the course of the season. Look, we saw Dame Sarr, his game in December and his game in March were very, very different. I think you're going to see the same kind of thing from Boom Boom. The excitement to me is that he's here for 2 years. And by the way, I know the transfer report, there's nothing assured, I have a strong feeling with as well Duke does at retention, probably with the kind of contract that we've signed him to. I don't know anything about it, in terms of specifics, but my bet is that it's a 2-year deal. The real excitement with Boom Boom is what he will be in 27, 28, because there are a lot of people out there who say it's early. We don't know. You got to see how guys develop, blah, blah, blah. This guy looks like he could be the number 1 pick in the 28 draft. I'm just saying that is the expectation as a possibility. Again, we need to see how guys develop. We need to see what being in college does for him. But he's one of the guys on the radar to be the absolute number 1 pick, the best player in the 2028 NBA draft. Very exciting to have that on campus, even if we're getting it earlier than you might expect.
And I'll also add this, he has the pedigree, right? We mentioned his dad, Ruben, who started at Georgetown and then played a couple years in the NBA with the Trailblazers before he went abroad. The one thing about Ruben Boumtje Boumtje that a lot of people don't remember is that he said famously that if he wasn't drafted by a team in the NBA, he was going to go to med school. And he was going to, and so he said he stayed at Georgetown because he wanted to get the degree. And then he said, I'm going to go to med school if y'all don't draft me. And the Trailblazers said, put that med school on hold for a few years. We'll take you. So I think, again, part of this was, and we should note that there was a prominent new coach from a prominent university who flew over to Spain to try and land him and his teammate. And Duke kind of said, hey, you want to come over here? We got the academics. We got this. We have this set up. You won't have to be the guy right now. There's not a lot of pressure for you to kind of come into your own, but you're going to understand what Duke expectations are like. And I think that is what won him and his family over. I think it's genius by Jon Scheyer. And once again, me, you, and Scott were talking about what term we apply to Jon Scheyer. Wizard is just not enough anymore, because he took a guy who teams were courting to be their starting center this year. And he said, why don't you come and train with us, essentially, and 1 year from now, you're going to be a monster, and then we'll unleash you on the rest of college basketball, and you can do your thing. And that was what won him over.
Yeah, and again, we're trying to temper expectations. We're not saying that Boom Boom's not going to play this year. We're not saying that at all. And believe me, there's a world where his development, his physical strength, and the such that Duke just goes, yeah, this guy's so talented, he's so good that he's starting on day one. That I'm not saying that's impossible. I just think it's a little less likely. But man, the war for minutes between him and Cam Williams and Sebastian Wilkins and Drewski, I mean, like, there's a real battle going to happen there for minutes. And I want to talk about that for a second, Donald. You mentioned that this guy, that almost any other Power 5 team in the country, this guy's a starter. Duke now has 11 guys in the roster who would be likely starters on virtually any other team in college basketball. And I'm not even counting Maxim Mayer, who will functionally redshirt this year, whether it's redshirt or whatever. I'm not even counting him. And Donald, ordinarily we would have thought in the old era of college basketball, this kind of depth was impossible. Donald, Jon Scheyer has made Duke, and God, I hesitate to even say this, by the way, because I'm worried that I'm cursing us. Donald, Jon Scheyer has kind of made Duke injury proof. I don't want to test it. I'm not saying I want.
Don't that was rephrase that. We are a deep roster. That's what you meant to say.
That's what
we are a very deep roster.
Duke is too deep at every single position on the floor. That's +1. That is unheard of in college basketball. And I've got a little bit of a theory here, and see if you think I'm completely wrong about this. I think we've seen this beginning to manifest this year. There always used to be I gotta rush to get to the NBA era. There was a feeling that guys were like, as soon as I can get drafted, I'm gone and I'm going to be drafted. I think that we're now seeing, there's no question we're now seeing guys staying in school and saying, oh, you know what? I can make millions in college basketball. So maybe if I'm not a lottery pick, a late lottery pick in the top 15, top 20, maybe sticking around in college basketball makes more sense. There may be I think there may be a small shift. That's what a mindset shift that is happening, where guys aren't necessarily rushing to the NBA. And as a result, it may be that kids, especially the kind of kids that Duke is targeting and the way Duke is talking to them, that Duke is saying, you can be a little more patient with your playing time. Pretty much all the young guys on the Duke roster, maybe with the exception of Cameron Williams, are guys who it looks like they're probably going to spend multiple years in college basketball. They aren't going to be immediately one and done moving on to the NBA. And maybe Duke is able to say, you know what? Being part of a stud team this year, where you're battling the best of the best in practice every single day with one of the best staffs in all of college basketball, building your brand, playing for a team that is competing for the national title, if not the favorite for the national title. Maybe do that this year, and then your time comes next year, and that's okay. In the past, that wasn't okay. Guys would just, no way, I'm going someplace where I can play right away. But I feel like there's been this little this little shift in what people are thinking. And maybe I'm wrong about this. And maybe chemistry will be a problem on this team. I know that even a really patient kid may get really frustrated if he doesn't get off the bench at all in a close game. But maybe we're going to see a little more patience out of some of these kids than we've seen in the past. Am I crazy about this, or is maybe that a little bit of how Jon Scheyer has built a ridiculously, absurdly deep? I'd have to go back and look. Probably the deepest Duke roster we've ever seen.
I would offer this as an alternative theory. I think the NIL part does weigh. I mean, we looked at the stats. It was 71 early entrants into the NBA draft this year. Is the lowest since 2003. Last year, I think it was 131.
And it was like more than 300 just a couple years ago. More than 300
just a couple years ago. And remind you, there's 60 or fewer draft picks total in the NBA draft. So the fact that there's still guys who are doing this, like a lot of guys are kind of testing the waters. And as we've seen, some of these guys aren't even doing that officially. They're just kind of getting some feedback and going, hey, let me just stay in here because the money's all right.
There's 71, but my bet is that number's going to go down to like around 60 or so.
Yeah, there'll be some people that pull out.
John Blackwell's name is in the draft. He's not going to stay in. Flory Badunga's name is in the draft. He's not going to stay in. Elliot Cadeau's name is in the draft. He's not going to stay in. There are a lot of guys like that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is this. I think Jon Scheyer learned last year that even if he's going to shorten his bench, he needs a bench that's capable, right? Yeah. He's trying to build a group that, if for something happens, let's say foul trouble, because we're not going to say the other word. Let's say we get some foul trouble. Jason, last year, what happened when our bigs got into foul trouble? We got small pretty quickly, right? It wasn't small, but it was small enough to alter how we performed. Now we got 4 guys over 7 feet tall, or 6'11", right?
Yeah.
Even if you break Maxime Meyer in case of emergency glass, right? Like if you throw him on 4, he's 7'1". Stand there and look like a tree, right? Do that for 5 minutes while Pat gets some rest. Like, you can do stuff like that now. And I think he wants a team that in March that he can look up and down the roster and go, any one of these guys at any point can have their number called, and I know they'll be ready. That's what this season is going to be about. We're surely going to talk about how he's going to prepare this team on the next episode. But I think as far as recruiting is concerned, he's going after guys, and even a quote unquote project in Boumtje Boumtje. He's a guy that he thinks is capable. Yeah, he might be 17 when he hits campus, but there's going to be a point where Jon might say, kid, you're in. And now let's see how he performs against some of the best teams in college basketball, against some of the best players in college basketball. And if he starts to perform, the great thing about this is nobody's guaranteed any spot except for the opportunity to compete. And so all these guys have decided within themselves that they want to compete with each other, and they're going to make each other stronger. I think that's terrific. And in this day of NIL, sure, that might help with things, but the competition has still got to be there. Not every team has this setup where some guy who could be starting and making $5 million is sitting on the bench, hopefully getting 20 minutes a game. That's not happening everywhere else. And Jon Scheyer, again, has his own definition in the category of wizardry and sorcery of getting all these guys to buy into that. And now it's about putting this team fully together. And I'm sure we're going to talk about how that's going to round out in the coming days. Last word before we take a break.
Yeah, my last word is this. I love the nicknames. Duke there's so many great nicknames on this team. I mean, we've been talking about Boom Boom. You got Ron Ron. You got Cephas. You got Seabass. You got Big Pat. You got Drewski. Those are some first class. Those are some.
The Dominator. I can't believe you forgot the Dominator.
The Dominator. Someone said to me he's the Italian stallion, but the Dominator is pretty damn good.
I'm sorry. That's only going to be Rocky, and we can't switch that. But yeah, we're going to have to learn all these names. We're going to learn all the nicknames, but and also Duke may not be done. We might be getting a couple guys to kind of fill out the practice part of this roster, as we will discuss on the other side. So let's pause right here. Let's take a quick break. More on the DBR podcast when we get back.
It's time to throw your lash curler away. Seriously, Lancome's new Curl Goddess Mascara keeps your lashes curled and volumized. From the pre-game to the after party, this fast-setting curl and volume mascara gives you up to 30 hours of wear with no way down. You know what? Curls really do have more fun. Shop Lancome Curl Goddess Mascara now on Amazon.
Walmart Business is in the business of saving you time, money, and hassle. Whether your business started in a garage or is a garage, Walmart Business has the tools to help you get where you're going. Tools like free shipping, multi-user accounts, and just about any item your company needs.
Even a double filtration cyclone dust collector.
Yep, even that.
Sweet.
Walmart Business. It's the Walmart you love. Now for your business. Learn more at business.walmart.com. Terms apply.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love with no artificial sweeteners and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.
All right, we are back. We continue our discussion. This episode is mainly about recruiting. We talked about Joaquim Boumtje Boumtje on one side, and now on the other side, we're going to talk about. First of all, Jason, let's talk about somebody who's near and dear to our hearts. A name that is near and dear to our hearts. A Knueppel, another Knueppel, Kager Knueppel, and now an offeree from Duke University as far as the scholarship's concerned.
Yeah, exactly. We got word just in the past couple days that Duke has officially offered a scholarship to Kager Knueppel. He is obviously Con Knueppel's younger brother. Con Knueppel's younger but bigger brother. Kager is 6'10". I was told that Kager was very calm when Jon Scheyer called him and that they chatted a little bit. And then after the chat was over, Kager came out and said, yeah, he offered me a scholarship. Isn't that nice? Sort of like he's not a kid who gets overexcited. Sort of like his big brother, who is also someone who's just very calm and nothing phases him. Kager apparently is about the same way. I was told that the Knueppel phone has been ringing off the hook since EYBL session 1 last weekend when Kager hit 54% of his 3-pointers. Just wow. I mean, the performance he put on at 6'10" has coaches all across the country saying, yeah, son, you interested in coming to visit? He has visits officially scheduled for Purdue and Wisconsin, but he's going to wait probably. Not clear whether he's going to take those visits before or after the EYBL season is over, but what I've heard is that he's kind of waiting until after Peach Jam in mid-July. That's when the EYBL season ends. That's when he's going to really start to focus on which school is the right school for me. So I don't think we're expecting an early decision from him. But obviously really exciting and really interesting that Duke has gotten involved with Kager. The major recruiting services have not updated their rankings, but a month or two ago, Kager was seen as someone who was inside the top 100, but not inside the top 50. And that's why a lot of people were like, I don't know that Duke necessarily makes a lot of sense for him. Kid just kept on working on his game, kept on getting better and better, and then came out and started raining three-pointers on everybody. And suddenly it looks like Duke is very, very interested in Kager Knueppel. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe this may be the first official offer that Duke has made in the class of 2027.
Yeah, and look, I think it's great for the Knueppel family, right? It's great to kind of have, and if Duke can establish this pipeline, unlike the Plumleys, which we love, there's 5 of them. So there's five Knueppels that we can have over the course of the next decade. And so I really like that part, but I also just appreciate the fact that, like Con, Kager has been a guy who was a diamond in the rough and has just kept developing, kept improving his game. And now he's at this point where teams like Duke are offering him scholarships. I think that's terrific. It speaks to, again, it could have been very easy for him to rest a little bit, so to speak, on his laurels. The fact that Con's now in the NBA, they don't have to, worry about things as much anymore. The fact that his parents were both, world-class athletes, his uncles were world-class athletes, that has not stopped him from being a student of the game and a guy who is perfecting his craft in his own right and trying to form his own path. So I really enjoy that. And look, I would love to see Kager in a Duke uniform. I would imagine, knowing how Con worked as well, that he would probably take his visits in the fall when he can see a practice, he can see how they will work. And also, again, as per the discussion we just had, he doesn't have to worry about being a guy who's going to come out after 1 year to go to the NBA. He can continue to work on his game at arguably the best facility in America, if he committed to Duke. So I'm really looking forward to just watching him continue to grow into his own right, and would love to see that in a Duke uniform at some point in the near future.
Should we get to the other person who's supposedly visiting campus?
Yes. So we talked about how this class feels like, or at least this roster feels like it's about done. It's not completely done because, Jason, as you're about to discuss, there is one other guy that it seems like Duke is at least kicking the tires on that would round out maybe the practice portion of the squad.
Yeah, and it's kind of amazing that we're talking about this guy potentially as a practice player. But Jacob Theodosiou, who played for Loyola Marymount last year.
Maryland. Loyola Maryland.
Oh, did I say Marymount? I can't believe that. Yes, Loyola Marymount.
There's 3 Loyolas, and you have 33% chance, Jason. Give yourself some grace.
There are 9,000 Loyolas, yeah. Loyola Maryland, he played for last year. And was a starter and a pretty good player for them. Averaged better than 13 points per game, almost 3 assists, 3.5 rebounds. Not a great 3-point shooter, but a guard who stands about 6'4". This guy entered the portal, and there weren't like major Power 5 conference teams looking at him. I heard he was looking at like Queens, Siena, perhaps. Schools kind of like that, smaller mid-majors were looking at him. And apparently he is also interested in talking to Duke about coming over and primarily being a guy who would compete for you in practice. Now, not someone who would be expected to find his way into the rotation. Although, if crazy things happen, if he plays great, sure, hey, why not? But this guy's a different caliber of player than a Jack Scott or Ife Ifuchukwu or some of the other guys that Duke has had, sort of deeper on the bench in recent years. I think it's a really interesting decision on his part. And by the way, he has not committed to Duke. We haven't gotten any indication of that. We just know he's taking an official visit, took an official visit of yesterday, Wednesday. So, he may even still be on campus today, Thursday. Don't know all the details there. But I think a really interesting decision on his part, because even if he was going to find a spot on one of these other mid-majors this year, this is not a guy who really projects as someone who probably is going to earn a living playing professional basketball. Maybe if he went, sort of further down some of the pro leagues overseas, but not someone who probably has big pro basketball dreams. So, okay, come to Duke, learn, spend a year really experiencing what that staff does, maybe ingratiate yourself a little bit with the Duke staff. That can open some nice coaching doors to you. Guys who aren't necessarily pro players may see themselves as future pro coaches or
execs. Yeah.
Yeah. Agents, whatever it may be. The connection to, if you're this kid, a connection to Duke is worth so much in the pro basketball world compared to playing at whatever other mid-major it may be that you could transfer to. So, on the surface, a guy who played 25, 30 minutes a game last year at his school, who averaged 13 plus points per game for his Division I program, you go, why would they come to Duke and probably not play in the vast majority of Duke basketball games? Well, if he's really thinking about his future, this may be the best move for his future. So really interesting that he's on a visit, and we'll see what happens with him.
And again, having a guy that, like you said, averages 13 points a game and almost 3 assists, 3.5 rebounds a game, coming off of your bench deep with like 13 seconds left. This again, we love the Spencer Hubbards of the world, but this is far from that, right? This is a guy who can step on the court and, hey, Jason, in the stats game, when we're talking about getting to 100 points, this is a guy that can get you to 100 points if he comes off the bench late in the game. You have those opportunities. But I also like the fact that you mentioned, the coaching paths, or just the alternative paths that keep you within basketball while you maybe not be playing. And first of all, he's going to get high quality education. He'll get access to a lot of people who we don't have to name all the people who run the world here that have Duke degrees and they're hanging in their office.
Oh man.
But also this corollary just sprung to my mind. Guys like, shout out Kenny Blakeney, who just hired John Wall as his director of basketball operations. That was not that title was not a title 3 years ago. And now everyone seems to have it because, again, Duke started doing this a little bit while back. The Rachel Bakers of the world and things like that. There are other ways to be involved in collegiate and in pro athletics without having to pick up a clipboard or bounce a basketball. So I think this is an intriguing thing for him. And again, I think for Duke, having just stepping up the quality, not to disparage any of the other walk-ons or low body scholarship players we've had in the past, but having a guy who is capable of starting at some schools coming off of your deep bench or just being a practice player is only going to help everybody get better because he's going to be able to scout your opponents that much better. So I like this opportunity. We'll see what he decides to do. Obviously, he has a big decision on whether he wants to play a lot or if he doesn't want to play a lot, but be at maybe a Power 5 school. But it's interesting that Duke is thinking in those lines. So, Jason, we'll leave it here because we have a lot more to discuss. Programming note: this episode right here is done, but just be patient. Very, very soon, you're going to get the next episode where we're going to talk about everything else that happened over the last couple of days. So Jason and I are going to take a break. A little bit for you guys. It's probably going to be a 24-hour break. But this is the Duke Band. He's Jason. I'm Donald. Duke Band. Play us out and take us into the next episode.
Mother's Day has a way of sneaking up on you. But when it does, 1-800-Flowers makes it easy to send Mom something beautiful, thoughtful, and worthy of everything she does. Right now, with double blooms from 1-800-Flowers, order 1 dozen roses and get another dozen for free. It's a bigger gesture with fresh, beautiful flowers arranged to make Mother's Day feel as special as she is. Make Mother's Day feel bigger with double blooms at 1-800-Flowers.com/Spotify. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/Spotify.